can hit the little dismiss button up at the top if you'd like.
Okay.
So I'm going to leave it to you, Ron and Josh, and best of luck.
Okay, well, thank you, Carmel.
Thank you.
So I'm going to get Josh to pull up the PowerPoint that we did or that Josh worked on. And I'll give you just a brief kind of overview on this. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm a teacher at Leo Hayes High School, as Carmel mentioned, and been working in the art department. I used to teach at Fredericton High before Leo Hayes was even built. So I've been in the district for a number of years and pretty much my career. Anyway, and I had a student this year, Josh Vandenborg, who was with us, and as an intern from UNB, and we, when you sit down with an intern, you kind of go, okay, like, what are your strengths and so on. And Josh's strengths were in the digital world because he went through the craft college here in town, and then as a graphic artist. So his background is in that area, and we just happened to be, especially last semester, we actually had 2 graphic arts, which are grade 11 courses, if you're not aware of those. So, and there's lots of room there for, working with, digital technology, whatever it is. And I asked Josh about the background. Now, just to preface this, I teach it as a paper and, kind of design sort of program, and I didn't work with this stuff before. So I'm kind of new to this game. We don't have a Mac lab at Leo Hayes. We don't have, and I'm not complaining about that. I teach it through, design basics and all that sort of stuff that are fundamental to visual art. So anyway, we do stuff like, all sorts of design of packaging and other things, but I've never worked really with the iPads before. I have very limited experience, but Josh's strengths are in that area. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Josh, and he's going to go through the PowerPoint that we collaborated on and he put together. So Josh, welcome, and you can introduce yourself and just kind of start with the PowerPoint, and then I'll interject along the way here as we work through this. So
sounds good. Thank you. So yeah, just to give a little bit more of a background about myself, I did the applied arts program at UNB, so I got to go and do my 2 years at the college. I studied mostly graphic design and some like video work and just everything to do with digital media, which ended up being awesome coming into my teaching degree. I got to use it a lot in the classroom, and you'll kind of get to see the results of that over this presentation. So teaching art and design, I got the chance to take advantage of using iPads in the class, and we had a cart that got passed around in the school, so you just had to ask that it was free. And on these iPads, we had access to the full Adobe suite, which I believe most teachers do, as long as you request it and make sure that your students are signed on as well. So we did that, and I got to do 2 different semesters of teaching. So I taught for my first practicum in the winter, and then the next one in the springtime. And the first time we ended up using some Adobe stuff. Then we actually gravitated more towards a program called where is it here? Adobe Draw, which was a little bit of a simple program, but a fun one, in which you got to do like a lot of digital illustration, very, very basic tools, but extremely interesting. And I kind of noticed a trend of like the students absolutely loving it, just getting absorbed in this kind of work, which made me, question more of like what other things could we use with Adobe. And just to go over like a little brief explanation before we get into the actual work that we got into, for those that are unaware of like the capabilities of the Adobe suite and like what you can do with it, I thought I'd just show like a quick little video that can explain like a good chunk of these apps. as far as like me and Ron's class went, we only used 2 different apps, but there's so much more, and there's also a lot more that can be applicable to other classes as well. There's a lot to be taken advantage of when it comes to the Adobe suite. So I'm just going to play a quick video here. Somebody flag me down if there's any audio issues, but this is just going to be a nice brief overview of what the Adobe suite allows you to do.
Maybe you've heard about Adobe's Creative Cloud, but you're still not completely sure what it is. Simply put, it's a whole new way of working and creating, giving you everything you need to do your best work. When you join Creative Cloud, you get all the same state-of-the-art creative tools you've always used and loved. Tools like Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, Premiere Pro, but they've been completely reinvented to support a more intuitive and connected way of creating. Plus, you have access to brand new tools like Adobe Muse and Edge tools and services for building beautiful modern websites. With one membership, you get every Adobe creative tool so you can constantly experiment and expand your skills. And the very latest features are always available to you when you're ready to download and install them. Creative Cloud lets you work from anywhere, on any device, wherever you are and with anyone you want. You can sync your files to the cloud to work on them later, access them from another device, or share your files and collaborate with the team. In fact, Creative Cloud was specifically designed to streamline the way creatives work together. You can set up private folders, choose your collaborators, manage versions, and capture all the activity related to your projects, all in one place. And with the integration of Behance, the world's leading creative community, you can showcase your work to millions, get feedback, and get exposure. From right within Photoshop CC, you can post your designs to your Works in Progress portfolio on Behance, and then get instant feedback from your trusted peers. You can also explore and discover the world's best work from leading creatives, peers, and people you know. Behance ProSite is also included with your membership. It's a fully customizable professional online portfolio on your own URL. With ProSite, keeping your portfolio up to date becomes easier than ever. You can also build and publish websites, mobile apps, and iPad applications. It's all included in your membership. Download the creative apps from the cloud to your desktop and use them the same way you always have, whether you're connected to the internet or not. You have a central dashboard to help you keep track of your entire creative universe. Your ideas, files, fonts, colors, settings, and updates and upgrades to your desktop apps, as well as your collaborators and community activity. And you have access to a growing library of tutorials and inspirational content. It's all available in real time wherever you happen to be. Creative Cloud evolves as you evolve and gives you everything you need to keep up, so you can experiment, innovate, and embrace whatever's next. Create now.
Great. So that just went over a little bit of exactly what that program can do. It's quite simple to use too. It might seem like it could be like an overbearing thing, but it is. A lot of these programs is like a YouTube video way of really knowing your stuff and being able to like push that stuff on your students and being able to teach that stuff and just go further with it. I know this happens to be my background, but like as I showed this stuff to Ron and was showing the stuff to the students at the same time, he was picking up on it very fast and was also like, oh my goodness, there's so much capabilities with this stuff as well.
Amazing. Yeah.
I guess you could go off a little bit on that, Ron.
Yeah, no, like I said, my background is not, it's more like, paint, excuse me, paint, paper, drawing, all those sort of, areas, which, and not to belittle those, but certainly, I mean, I remember the days where we used to take stuff and scan it or take photos of it, and that was the digital format of your work, and then you'd put it on a web page or whatever, and that was it. But to create something digitally is not in my toolbox, but it's something that's just fairly straightforward, and there's a lot of overlaps. Like, for example, in the Adobe program, the Fresco program, there are paint applications like watercolor, oil paint, all these things which react, or even the drawing tools, charcoal, and so on. When you have experience with those, you can drag those into your digital world, and even paper types, that you can work on. So if you want to work on a what's called a cold press, paper in watercolor, let me explain that. That's like a rough paper that gives you a certain effect. you can do it in a digital format, so it will look like you're painting, even though your device that you're using is like the stylus that we used. And this stylus, the ones that you're looking at here on the screen, are actually from Walmart. So there's 10 for, I can't remember what it was. It was like 20 bucks or something like that, or 30 bucks. I don't even know, but it was so cheap. I couldn't believe it, because I was looking at, to get into this, using your finger is not the best way to do it. So when I told students about this, they were like, "Oh, this is amazing! You can get these." And these ones did work, and the first ones we got were more like actual pens, written pen that have and they fell apart very quickly. But these ones, and if you see here, the wood shop also designed our own little holder so we could keep track of them, and we knew which ones were missing or whatever, right? So anyway, it's just an easy way to kind of get into that world of digital sort of stuff. Maybe we'll go on, Josh, and I'll interject as we come along there.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I know we have more slides, so yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We started off with Adobe Draw, and the students really took away with it. I was pretty surprised at how into it they were, and just give me more kind of thing. And so I was just like, okay, well, I think I have this awesome opportunity to teach the same course the next semester, so let's up it. Let's go to a different program that just has a little bit more to offer, a little bit more detail, which happened to be Adobe Fresco. Which Adobe Fresco, as you can kind of see here with the illustration, is a little mix between Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, which is Photoshop being probably the most common one that people know about. But this kind of intertwines the illustration side, the digital art side of the Adobe Suite with pictures as well. So we started off for a little warm-up exercise to get people into this kind of work is we would get the students to find one of their favorite cartoon characters or favorite characters that they love, and then I would show them every single step how to mimic that artwork to a T. So they could do it with this program. And then after they got to the end of that and reproduce basically that same character, they're like, oh my goodness, I can realize, or they just realized what they can do with it and the potential there, and making their own characters, their own designs. That was just the key factor that kind of just opened their mind, I guess, towards these programs. So just for a little quick example too, I'm just going to exit the presentation and show everybody a little bit about what Fresco is like, if it opens up here. So this is the program. Everybody can see that. It's pretty simple looking like this. Quite a few options, but you can really create some awesome stuff with it. I just want to go over some basics with it just to show you kind of what the students were getting up to. So you can see here that I got lots of different options of buttons on the side, my canvas in the middle, and then my layer panel on the right side, which is easily, I think, the biggest thing to learn with all these programs. And the nicest thing about the Adobe Suite 2 is that whatever program you end up using, all these buttons or all these icons are used throughout all their different programs. So you start recognizing these similar things, and so you know what effects you can manage in other programs, because a lot of it carries over that way. So I'm just going to move or open this up. And this is just a little artwork that I did when I was working for the Brunswickian on campus. So I just did a little illustration there. You can see my layers coming in here with different illustrations. I did just a tiny quick one for an illustration about COVID and just submitted that for paper. But this is just one small thing that you can do here. This was used with lots of different paint brushes, so you can see on the side here, you have so many different options, and it's just quite fun. Like Ron was saying earlier too, it was really interesting to see the students react to going over a whole unit on watercolor painting or some style of painting, and then seeing that you can also do this digitally or apply it digitally, because you can do all that stuff. You can download brushes. It's really interesting work, and you can also do lots of stuff with typography. It's all over the graphics field, all over the digital media field.
So Bonnie
yeah.
just had a question. It was how long did that work take for you, to complete that, this particular work here? Like what, and again, you being more like on the expert scale, maybe you could say how long you think a student might come up with that, and then also how long did it take you, just by comparison, because I think that's maybe more accurate too as well.
Yeah.
I think that was your question. Yeah. Thanks, Bonnie.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So something like this, for me, knowing the program and all that, it really didn't take very long. It was quite a loosely based illustration. And I would say this probably took me like 10, 20 minutes. Like it does not take very long once you kind of know the program well. For some of our students, those that are like brand new to it, it would take a decent amount of time. I was always kind of blown away with like how long things would take, but there's a lot of detail that went into their stuff. And certain students came to the class too with a previous knowledge of this stuff, a little bit more advanced in that sense. So they could handle this, I think, pretty quickly. Maybe not in comparison to me, who like I do it as like a part of my living, but they could definitely produce it at a good pace, I'm sure. I don't know. I don't know exactly.
I don't know if you saw Carmel's comment there, but it would take him a year to do it, So anyway, but no, I think most students to do a drawing, especially you've got multiple layers in here, and we can talk about layers and stuff later. But certainly it would take several classes, and our classes in high school are an hour long, so it might take maybe 4 or 5 classes to complete. And kind of it's the devil is in the details too, and the finesse. And often what they're doing, what I loved about this program is 2 things. The simplicity of the tools on the side. Okay, it's got a lot of, like, when you jump into them, you can go to like a paint tool will have a whole range of stuff. But if you just want to just put down some, like this is dry media, for example, for drawing what Josh is looking through. So Conte crayon, you've got different. We even did one with comic book effects with the Ben-Day dots and so on. So it looks more like an Andy Warhol's or Lichtenstein, painting and stuff like that. But if as long as you know what you're doing, you can kind of you can guide them into very simple brush shapes. Keep it simple. And what was good was that Josh did do the initial thing with the comic character was totally just like we marked it, but it was a very low mark, and it was just for getting it done kind of thing and experimenting with it. And that way you get to see with your students the various ability levels. Like we did have, just to say as well, and I'm kind of maybe going off topic here, but I don't have my teacher brain in yet, but we did have special needs kids in the class. We had kids who were fully autistic who did work. We had kids who were special needs, learning disabled, and so on, various levels of students. Some students who, even to do drawing or painting, having extreme difficulty, but they got something done in here and they seem to enjoy it. Level of engagement was really, really high. And I might have jumped ahead on a few different points there, and I'm not sure if I picked out my 2 topics, but the simplicity of the tools here. And the second point was that I want to mention was the ability to, if you don't like a layer, and Josh, maybe just talk about the layers and the ability to edit those layers. That's what I want to talk about. So like any mistake you make, you just forget that, and it's not like in a painting where you have to kind of deal with the under layers. You can get rid of those under layers. So talk about a little bit about that, just for a second there, Josh. I think that's
sure thing.
Yeah.
One thing, yeah. So when it comes to, any kind of a schoolwork where there's a little bit of experimentation or a lot of time put into it, where it's sometimes pretty pretty crappy if you're making a mistake and you want to go back, or you limit yourself for putting time into something and then having to hand it in for a certain due date. The nice thing with this is that there's so much room to fix your mistakes, and you're not like completely lost. Like you're not, putting yourself days behind if you make an error. So like if I, this is an example. So if I had something issues, like something I didn't like about it, like let's just say like the eyes were off or something like that, you can always switch between these layers. So you can probably see me selecting them on the side here. It highlights blue. And if I only wanted to erase the line work, then I can go and do that because I have those separate layers. And you can kind of see what artwork is on each one, but that's the nice thing. So if I go in and erase, I'm not scared about, erasing the skin tone, erasing the background, anything like that. If I go and highlight my layer and I want to go erase certain details about it, then I can just go like in there, make it a little bit bigger here. And I can just erase just the line work. So you see like the skin tone is still there, everything's still there. If I go over here, or if I go on the background, like nothing's being taken, it's only the line work. And then let's just say I screwed up and I'm like, well, that sucks. Then all you have to do is return. It's just like an undo with any kind of computer program. Just go back. I got all my things back just like so. And another thing about it too is that you can always like duplicate a file. So it's like if I liked my artwork, but I wasn't super happy with my colors, well, I can just go in. I can say duplicate my layer. I got 2 layers now, and then now I can actually just go and change those colors completely and not worry about my other one because I have a duplicate. So it's very, very versatile in that sense. And I think the students really liked that. Like upon like some of my experiences, like when they were doing some of the clay work or ceramics, if their pot like cracked up or if something went wrong that way, like the frustration shown by the students was
there's no going back. There's no going back at that point. Like a clay piece it fires and the glaze crawls off and doesn't stick properly, or it they say blows up or cracks into multiple pieces because there's air pockets inside. You can only go back and do another one. You can't make those changes to your clay piece. You can glue it back together, but it's gone, right? Sort of thing. So anyway, I think that's a really good point, and it somehow feels safe, and it also feels very natural for the students. I mean, I think we've got a few pictures coming up here too, Josh, with student work,
yeah,
and you'll see like students just jumping into this, and I mean, we did choose some of the best ones, but some of these students were just jumping into this, and they were able to, because they have either Android devices or Apple devices, they also worked with whatever they were comfortable with. So people brought, like we had of course Apple devices, the iPads, but they were also bringing in a tablet which had a very similar program, and Josh was able to I mean, talk to them about their programs, and because they're so similar, they tend to use a lot of the graphics tools that Adobe is kind of like that's the, I guess I don't know what the word would be, the mainstay for graphic arts is the Adobe programs, but very comfortable with working with it. And of course a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them were, we'll call them digital natives, or they're very familiar with it. So yeah, very, very fun.
Yeah, and the thing about that was fun too is just kind of getting into it is that it was one of those things that they came to the classroom, got right on the iPads, and they were excited to just have a little bit of their own kind of me time, creating something that they were quite prideful about, and just putting on the headphones, just a break from like the discussion in class, just get right into it. So it was quite nice to see. And I've included my lesson plan here too, which is something I could obviously send to anybody that would like it for something like this, if it's is new to them. All it kind of covers is basically what my goals are with teaching this kind of stuff, and where it can go that way. I won't spend too much time on this, but that's just something that I just wanted to include. So moving on, something like this too would be a nice little like step-by-step for a day of it. So it would be like I just go based on the basics here. Just go like create a new canvas size appropriately for your character design, name your file, just little reminders that a lot of the students already knew about these programs, but just nice little notes to keep with them and for them to get used to, I guess. And this character on the right is something very similar to what I was teaching. So going over basic structure of characters and shapes within the characters and all that, and then adding all those layers that we were talking about on top. So you can, if we really, really zoomed into the character there, you would notice that there's so many different textures and blending tools and all this kind of stuff that's layered on top. And that is what was the majority of their time with these characters that you'll see in the end here. Some other things I wanted to talk about, so I guess we kind of brushed on it earlier, is how this kind of art form differs from other art forms. And that's going on, you know, like doing like a whole watercolor unit, like I said, and then realizing that you can also use those same effects or that same look, but in a digital format with potentially less room for mistakes or errors, because you have that manipulativeness in the program. And that's one thing I think that they really liked about it. And other than it is another form of technology that's similar to a phone, so they're always interested in that. But this was quite different in the sense that there was this big interest to just be on these iPads and create this common artwork that they would see all around. Like this digital media style art is everywhere and like bigger than ever in this consumer's age. So I thought that they had a big attachment to it in that way as well. So that's one thing I wanted to bring up. Another thing too is like a lot of these students got to see like the potential of their work. So we had one student who she was, you know, quite into this kind of work, and she ended up making her own logo design for what was it, Ron? What's the name of the group in the school? Was it the Titans?
Cyber Titans, yeah.
Yes, she made a Cyber Titans logo for a group at the school, which ended up being printed on all sorts of like shirts and hoodies and stuff, so she could actually see the results of her work and how digital media kind of crosses over into that field as well, like the actual physical stuff. So that was quite interesting, and a lot of these people too, or a lot of these students too, were able to start their own digital portfolio and add these things. And I was going over their work and just saying, like, you know, this is like great material for anything post-secondary, or just, you know, this stuff is really sought after, which I think they saw a lot of interest in as well. But moving on.
I'm just going to make one more comment, and Bonnie has been. I'm monitoring the chat here on the side, and Bonnie had mentioned that, you know, it's a great lead-in course for students interested in post-secondary graphic design. The other aspect to it that I think is really interesting is that a lot of students, once they get hooked on this, will also carry this into other aspects of their life that they don't have to go into graphic arts. They might be business owners who will, instead of hiring a graphic artist to do their stuff, they might have an inkling that, yeah, I can create it myself. You know, I can create, you know, my logo or my design for my company. And Bonnie here, I'm just monitoring your questions here. You could reach out to the community, new businesses looking for designs, you know, applied stuff for marketing and all that sort of thing. And certainly that's a great way to go. You know, I mean, it's advertising and all that sort of stuff. We could make it into a course that what we want to do, our goal as a department, is to make it integral in the school so that we design the logos that would go on shirts. We start designing, instead of doing all this stuff outside, you know, like let's make it some aspect where we can bring that into the school. So yeah, I agree with that. Anyway, so
that's a great point. Yeah. And another thing I kind of wanted to bring up, because you sparked this idea, is that one of the better things about these programs as well, especially with this recent year with COVID and everything, is that all these digital files were very easily shareable. So students were able to do this work at home, whether they wanted to actually use the apps on their phone, because they had access to it not just on the iPads, but on their phones as well and their laptops, and then send it through Teams or send it through whatever they needed to send their work through. But it was quite easily shareable that way, and collaborative in that sense too.
It was hugely advantageous in a year of COVID. I mean, I'll just say that.
Yeah, exactly.
For handing stuff in, because everything is digital. Like, there's no lost piece of paper, as long as you saved it or whatever, you had it, it worked on it. It was, yeah.
Yeah. Moving on there. So we're just going to see some of the awesome student work that the students came up with. So start here. We'll just kind of go over some stuff. So the student did an awesome job, and they actually kind of worked with some typography skills as well. But it's just amazing to see what some of them come up with.
So just with this type of thing, the other thing they're doing is, for a comfort level, I mean, depending on their comfort level of drawing, they can kind of completely create their own design on their own. Some people had their own characters, and we'll show you those. But this type of design is using a photo as a source, which is a layer in your background, which you create on top of. So maybe, Josh, you could just explain that just a little bit more of the layering process with this type of imagery.
Sure thing. So yeah, this would be picture based, which is kind of that tie into Photoshop, where you're working with photos. So you'd actually be able to find any image off the internet, which I encouraged a lot of the time when it came to poses or gestures, or even looking for certain color palettes online. I'd recommend to my students to find that, save it into their photos or their camera roll, and then bring it on over into the program, where they could either draw a layer of paint on top of that, like mimicking a pose or a gesture, like I said, which ended up, for certain students that weren't so good at drawing those type of things, they could get past that and maybe, put more of their focus towards textures or special effects or whatever it may be. But they could get past the point of just getting a certain gesture or a certain pose for their character. Not to say that it took away from the originality, because I encourage them to create their own characters, but still using a different pose. But they weren't copying anything by any means online, other than the first initial task, which was just to mimic a character that they like, just to see the capabilities of the program. And I'd like to point out too, I don't know if it was earlier or not, but this is grade 11 and 12 work. This one's quite interesting. So this one was, again, one of those images where I think she took it from a pose online, but created a completely unique character of her own. And with this kind of stuff, I can't do it, unfortunately, in PowerPoint, but if you zoom in, there's an immense amount of quality in the textures and colors used here. But it's a pretty interesting work. Same with something like this. So this was someone who actually was into digital art before the class, and when she learned that we were doing it, she was quite excited to show her work. She's been playing with
did
special
multiple of each project, so many. It was just I'm done and now I'm going to do another one, sort of thing. So yeah.
But this is some awesome work, and she was just thrilled to be able to do that in the classroom and show everybody what she can do. This one works more with special effects. That's why you can get the sense of real light protruding from some of the paint, like the lightning in there. But you can see that she's played around with the program before.
And that one was her own character, even though it looks I don't know what you call it, anime sort of style or whatever, but she just draws her own characters all the time, sort of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, and moving on to something simple like this. So I did a unit where we kind of covered pop art and that style, and this was kind of perfectly incorporated in this imagery here, kind of using like the Ben-Day dots and different comic book look and effect, and that's all textures within the program. So you can see like there's many different textures used here, even as simple as the drawing may seem. But it's I think it's a great job. Moving on, like some people just had real fun with it. So I think for this one, they did find a real life imagery, and then they kind of made it into a comic book character style art drawing. So that's kind of, again, falling on that pop art, Liechtenstein like kind of art movement. But I think it's still extremely successful.
Sort of a literal translation of or visual translation, of pop art. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, with these things, like I was saying to Ron earlier when we were discussing this presentation, is that it would be awesome too for schools to have the printing capabilities to be able to, actually put these up on walls, or again, like with what Ron was saying, like when contributing to like doing like logos or visuals for the school at all, like making these like nice big banners or posters. That would be another awesome thing for students to be able to have access to.
And we did, just to say, we did at the end of the school year, we typically have a student art show in the library, but we did one digitally, and we love that idea. It's so much simpler in terms of getting just pictures taken of the work or these digital artworks put in. So there was stuff from our Aboriginal arts program, from our music classes and so on, and digital files of music and all sorts of stuff featured on our webpage. So this makes it easy. It's submitted, and you can take it and put it on, and then with student permission, you can put it online. So very easy.
Yeah. This is another form of great work, like not too much focus on like background drawing, but more so on the character, but still awesome and very original. This one was great too. I thought it was just fun playing on character with rust all over it, and just adding to that kind of textured effect as well. And it was really interesting to see students at all different levels kind of pushing their own artwork into digitally. So it was kind of interesting to see all these different levels of art.
And this one was taken off of a self-portrait of himself with his phone, and then using that as the first layer, and then on top of that, what you do is you basically select a section. Like, let's say the first layer might be the face color itself. So that you outline and do a fill in on that. And then you can change those colors once you get in there. And you can also build up another layer, might be the lip color, which is actually 2 or 3 different colors in there. Hard to see, but like there's one base layer, and that's traced out over his lips, and then another layer on top of that of the line work and so on. It's just building and building and building. Each layer is a different section. There's a layer for the eyebrows, there's a layer for the eye, there's a layer for the nostrils. So if there's any problems in any of those layers, you get rid of that simple layer, you change it, and you're fine after that. That's the great thing about it, is it's not foolproof, but it's certainly, once you get used to it, sometimes it's a little bit sticky, and some people had problems navigating the tools and so on, but just selecting the right size line. But you try drawing with one line, and if it's not working, you reduce down your tool to make it smaller, finer, or a different color, whatever. You've got multiple choices in there. So
yeah, no, it was kind of fun. We had quite a few students that would take their own pictures and then digitally illustrate it from there, or just do family members, or it's quite a popular trend to do styles like this, and it's kind of fun to see the students take interest in that.
It's almost like, I mean, like the world of, your avatar and all that sort of stuff, it's done through an algorithm or whatever, but they're creating their own here, Yeah.
Yeah, and like some students, such as this one, they were already kind of familiar with doing digital art. Like it's something that they had a pretty big interest in, and they actually had their own programs. They had Procreate. A couple others had other programs that they were used to, but yet they still got to come and try the Adobe suite, like Fresco and the Adobe Draw. But they also were able to use this because this is the program that they were used to. So this was done with Procreate. Which is, nothing wrong with that either, but it's just kind of cool to see that so many programs can do this, and that students have access to something as awesome as the Adobe Suite.
And this girl here is from an Eastern European country. I forget, it was Ukraine, was it? Trying to think. Yeah. And Ukraine. She had studied kind of like graphic art in school over there, so they obviously had it, and was so familiar with it, and her plan is to go to be a graphic designer. So when we said, we're going to be doing this, like she brought in her whole tablet and stylus, had the whole thing, showed us multiple designs that she had already worked on. She kind of worked almost like an advanced level, like she could have easily pulled out one of her former projects and just handed that in, but she was constantly, she just, never had her hand up, just always like, I'm here, I'm working, this is awesome. So no. Sorry, another question there, Bonnie. We did not stipulate that they had to work with the Adobe Suite. We let them. I just thought it would be easier for everybody, especially in a COVID year. Like, let's just kind of, you know what I mean? Like, I could have said, everybody has to try it in this, but no, I didn't. We're trying to be very, delicate on the whole scenario with mental health and everything, of course.
Absolutely. I think this is wrapping it up for the artwork, and I just kind of wanted to open the floor for any more questions or comments. I think that's mostly everything that me and Ron wanted to show. It's quite some impressive artwork to see, and it was really interesting to see the kids take so much interest in it.
That was a really fun presentation to watch, and it was interesting because there was some crossover with Susan's presentation this morning, although hers was more general about technology, but obviously she's got that graphic art and design, and what I've been stewing on over your two presentations is what an interesting opportunity graphic art and design offers to students who don't necessarily haven't had, I would say, the privilege to really deep dive in and get comfortable in art and to see themselves as artists, which I think is shameful, but they're not as intimidated to come into your classrooms, even though we're still, sitting in that place of the elements of art and the principles of design, and you're offering them this new opportunity to re-engage in fine arts where they may not have been as comfortable. So I think it's a really interesting course, and I would be really interested to continue the conversation about what's going on in this particular environment that gets the kids re-excited in this late stage of their education with this most beautiful portfolio I get to be involved in, and what lessons we can take from that to maybe re-engage kids at the middle and early high school level that might sort of maybe up our numbers even in the senior electives, because I think you're adding access and equity in a way that I think you've been doing it, but I hadn't really thought about it that way. But it really seems to have come through both in your presentation today and also in the presentation Susan was giving this morning, although not specifically addressed. Yeah, so that would be my thoughts. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for joining, and I know there's a couple questions here in the chat area. So Jennifer McDougall has a question about, thank you so much for sharing, and I teach at a middle school, and would this program be acceptable and accessible for younger students? So I'm going to toss that over to Josh there and see, what do you think about younger students doing probably more simplified versions of this? And I know that this summer you were doing work at UNB with younger students, so maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. It's with younger students, it can pose as a challenge because some are much quicker at learning it. So they're just like, give me the next thing, give me the next thing. They could keep going that way. And others are having a tougher time with technology. Like they might be a little bit more newer to it. But that's not to say that like it is very easily approachable. And that's why I kind of said earlier that it's like, it's a YouTube video away from just knowing the basics of every single one of those programs, which is awesome. Like you can go so much further, especially like I said, like we started with Adobe Draw, which is quite simple, yet you can still do so much. And then we saw that there was room for students to go even further. So I just found a program that had a little bit more to offer and kind of went with it that way. So if I had a recommendation and you wanted to do that style of work, I would go with the Adobe Draw stuff, which again just simplifies that program a little bit more. Like there's less options and stuff, but you can still accomplish so much. And I think there would be a huge interest at that age level.
And I might have a question. That might be a question, not so much is it acceptable for younger students, but for Carm, do you happen to know if, or with Beth, do you happen to know if the basic Adobe programs are on the iPad, like on the ASD-W, like, you know, kind of like, what do they call that, free downloads or whatever? Does anybody know that?
The Adobe programs wouldn't be, but because we have to apply for, we put in a request to Rich and ask for the licensing for that school at that really great rate. But there are other programs. I know that Susan went through some free ones because she, you know, I think especially at middle school, if we want them to engage, then it would be great if they could continue engaging on their own time in the summer and whatnot and still have access. And Adobe is at a very high price point.
Right.
So
right.
it might be,
Okay. Yeah.
if there's an interest in that, I know we really are looking for some PL opportunities for middle school art this year. So if that's something of interest, then that is something that we could pursue. But no, not that way. We have to wait for the licenses to come out because we only get so many because it's expensive.
Right. Yeah. It's site,
That
you know, or whatever.
question?
Yeah.
But the district will install the free ones. So any of the free ones, if you put a request in, the technicians will install those.
Just to say, Adobe Fresco is free, and it's and Adobe Draw, I believe, as well. With any iPad, they're free.
Then we can get that.
Yeah. And they are part of the and it's also, Adobe Fresco is the most downloaded app in all of Adobe programs. That's just like a statistic, you know, sort of thing. So shows you how popular it is, right? Especially with all students, doesn't it? Lifelong learners, right? You know, everybody.
We're really lucky to still have that deal coming through, I think, for that good price for the Adobe suite for the graphic art and design this year. And
the Adobe suite specifically, like if you want Photoshop, but to tell you the truth, like for me as an artist, a visual artist, Adobe Photoshop scares the crap right out of me. Like, you know what I mean? The number of buttons on the side,
so much you can do
is scary, right? And Illustrator, even worse, you know what I mean? Like, so this is like, I won't even call it a light version. I don't even know what to call it. It's just a version that's so much easier it's intuitive. I think that's much more, it's much more intuitive. And I think as long as you take it with, give them some simple steps and give them some learn it a little bit yourself first, and then just give them some basic steps and go off of maybe some copied things first, and then let them go and see what happens, depending on your class size and your class time, that you have. I think you'd be quite surprised at what students could do, with younger levels.
Do you have an opinion on the stylus pens? That is a question I'm getting sometimes, is how much to, that's what you're using. How much to invest in the styluses? I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
I know that, like, I don't know what I remember researching it in the, the Apple pen is what, $100 and some or whatever. That again, scared the crap right out of me. So I went to Walmart and I tried these ones and they worked fine. So, and they were like less than $1 a piece, right? Sort of thing. So they might've been, I honestly can't remember right now. Do you remember, Josh, how much they were?
It wasn't a crazy amount by any means.
I think it was 30 or $40 for 30, like, because we got a classroom set, like it was like, it was.
But just a small rubberized end is perfect.
Yeah.
Like the first ones that we had were, I think, a bit cheaper, and we just happened to have them, and it was like quite like a bubble to the end of them. So like the smaller rubber end, the better. That's the only thing I would say.
And some people, were brought in their own stylus, right? And some people even said, "Hey, I went out and bought a stylus, the other day, Mr. Legier. I'm into this now." And they were doing stuff on their phones, like because it's adaptable to their phones, right? They were even using so the Procreate was the most popular one amongst the
Apple users,
Samsung users and all the the Android users, right? Is that it? Procreate, right? And then for anybody on an Apple iPhone or whatever, they were using, but most of them a lot of them just even use their fingers. I don't know how they do. I can't even, like, I have bifocals, so anyway, that's a whole other sort of thing.
Other thing I kind of wanted to point out too is that if we had students that would come in that were a little bit behind or missed a certain day when I was going over certain materials, there's lots and lots of tutorials like already within the program that you can check out. So I had some students that were just away for when we were going over brushes and how to make your own custom brushes and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just like, well, just watch this quick little tutorial here while I'm helping other students out. I'll come back to you, see if there's any other questions that you have. But they're awesome too, and they'll actually go through the program with you, like point out certain buttons and functions. So there's not just YouTube, there's also built-in stuff as well.
Okay, I think we just got that announcement from Jeff. Usually that's a sign he wants us to wrap it up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So you can go. I'd like to thank you so much, Josh and Ron. That was quite informative for me. So I'm pretty tech savvy, but I am the exact opposite of artistic. So, but I will spend some time playing around with these programs because you piqued my interest.
Awesome, great. Thanks everybody for joining. That was wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, I'm going to stop the recording right now. If anyone does have specific questions, they can. I'm sure you guys can answer them.
Just send us an email.